What's up, cooks? Welcome to the Card Kitchen. I am the Card Chef, and today we are cooking up part 3 of the custom mini set that I have created in parts 1 and 2, which we've already done. Go check them out if you haven't already. In part 1, we did EX Pokemon, ones that haven't gotten any evolutions yet. So things like Scizor and Steelix that we haven't got a single copy, whether it's an EX or not. I created EX versions for those cards. And then in part 2 we did baby Pokemon. That's right, introducing baby Pokemon who all have 30 HP, a 0 retreat cost, and no attack, but they all do have an ability that do something different. And for one of those cards, which is this one right here, which is Munchlax, which I also showed in the previous one alongside 9 other baby Pokemon, I gave it the ability EX Booster, which says trainer effects with Pokemon's names in them also apply to EX versions. So for example, Blaine works with both Rapidash and Ninetales. If there was an EX version of both those cards, if Munchlax was on the field, Blaine would work with those cards as well. So what I've done is I've created a bunch of EX versions for cards that have their names in cards like Blaine, Cynthia, Koga, and Barry. All 4 of those cards mention a specific Pokemon's name, and we do not have EX versions of them. Now for Cynthia, we do have a Garchomp EX, so Munchlax would allow Cynthia to work with Garchomp EX. But I've also created here, as you can see, a Togekiss EX who would also work with Cynthia as long as Munchlax is on the field. So Togekiss, a stage 2 psychic Pokemon, 170 HP, 1 retreat cost, and weak to metal. A Fairy Kiss is the attack that I gave it for 80 damage, 2 psychic type energy requirement, and the effect of the card reads, add a random supporter card from your deck to your hand, which means if you use Cynthia, it would already increase its damage by 50, making it 130, and then you would also be able to search your deck for another random supporter. So yes, it would be random, but that means you increase the chances of getting your second Cynthia into your hand, so you can do 130 on the following turn as well. And even if you don't, because you're getting a supporter card, you can still get things like Sabrina or Cyrus to gust your opponent's Pokemon out if you need to, things like Mars and Team Rocket Grunt to slow your opponent down, or even a red in place of Cynthia to continue to do increased damage. But anyways, what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the Barry Pokemon who works with Heracross, Staraptor, and Snorlax. We're going to start with Heracross. No, not Pinsir. I know a lot of people continue to get those two confused, but it is Heracross, and I did think it would be funny to put Heracross and Pinsir on the same card together, but this is Heracross EX, 140 HP, grass type, retreat cost is 2, and it's weak to fire because it's a grass type. Let's start with the attack. 3 energy, 1 grass, 2 colorless. Horn Catapult does a base of 100 damage with no additional effect. And this is because with Barry, it would be 1 energy would allow you to do 100 damage, because Barry obviously decreases the amount of energy required for an attack for Heracross by 2, and then it has 140 HP, which is actually the exact same as the current Snorlax that we have. It does 100 damage and 140 HP, which would make this card a lot stronger, especially since it doesn't put itself to sleep like the Snorlax would. And then it has the ability called Bug Trap, which says if you played Barry this turn, your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost is 2 more. So not only are you attacking for 100 damage for 1 energy, but you're also pretty much forcing your opponent to stay there locked into position, because it most likely can't retreat if its retreat cost becomes 2 more. If it already has a 2 retreat cost, which is very common in the meta right now, then it would be retreat cost is 4. So that would be absolutely huge. But this would also pair super duper strong with Staraptor, which also works with Barry, a stage 2. This would be Staraptor EX, 170 HP, colorless Pokemon, 1 retreat cost, weak to lightning, and a 3 energy requirement move, all colorless, and it does a base of 90 damage. Now on the card, if you can see it, which I'm sure you do, I actually wrote it wrong. I wrote can't retreat, but I actually meant to write after it attacks, your opponent's defendant Pokemon can't attack. So the same thing as Almastar. And so the way this would work is it would work super duper strong with the Heracross, because Heracross would pretty much stop it from retreating. This card would stop it from attacking as long as you played Barry. right? As long as you play Barry, then you basically lock it in no matter what. There's no way for it to attack and no way for it to retreat. This would be an absolutely broken combo, but a very hard combo to do. You would need to, one, have a Heracross on your bench, two, have a Staraptor, which is a stage 2 that you evolve into, get at least 1 energy on it, which obviously isn't hard, and then you would also have to have the Barry. And then you would also have to hope that even in 2 turns with 90 and 90, you can actually knock your opponent's Pokemon out. Because again, even if you get to attack twice, if you don't knock it out, then eventually it can retreat, right? Because it would be able to retreat and then bring in a different Pokemon to attack with. So maybe 90 is a little strong. Maybe I should have made it like 70 or less even. So because it could be a very broken combo, but I do think it'd be a really cool and interesting combo and a new theme deck to play alongside each other. And then let's get into the Snorlax. Snorlax EX, a basic colorless Pokemon with 160 HP. This would be the biggest basic HP Pokemon that we have in the game currently with 160, a 4 retreat cost, which is pretty standard for Snorlax to be honest. Weak to fight in, and it has just a basic attack for 4 energy, body slam 130. 130 is very good in the game right now. Think of Arceus 130 for 3. In this case, it's 130 for 4, but it could potentially be for 2 because if you play a Barry, it decreases the amount of energy required by 2. So therefore, 2 energy for 130 with a Barry could be really, really good. And then we're going to move on, and the next one we're going to look at is Raichu, who works with Lieutenant Surge. Now, we did not do one for Magneton and Electabuzz, who also work with Lieutenant Surge, but it's only because they evolve into Magnezone and Electivire, who we already have cards for, and I don't think it would be realistic to make an EX version for Electabuzz or Magneton since they get Pokemon that they already evolve into. But Raichu is the stage 1 electric type Pokemon, 140 HP, which is pretty standard for stage 1s to be honest. A 1 retreat cost, weak to fighting because it's an electric type, and I gave it the move Thunderstruck inspired by AC/DC, and 3 energy requirement, all lightning, and 100 plus damage. So it does a base of 100, but then does 20 more damage per energy move to Raichu EX this turn. So of course, Lieutenant Surge moves all of the energy on your bench to the Raichu in the active, right? So basically, if it moved 3, it would actually be able to do 160 damage, which is absolutely huge. But then on the following turn, you wouldn't be moving any, so it would only do 100. And not only that, but there are turns maybe where you move with your Lieutenant Surge, and you're only moving 1 or 2, which means you would only do 120 or 140. But what you could do is you can move them all once, knock something out, retreat, and then move all those back onto another Raichu EX with a second Lieutenant Surge, getting 2 attacks in a row. So let me know if you think this card is balanced or not. I'm sure you'll let me know honestly in the comments section below. But now we're going to move on to Golem, who of course works with Brock, who you can ramp energy onto Golem. And it obviously worked with this, with the Munchlax on the field. Stage 2, Golem EX, 180 HP, fighting type. 5 retreat costs. Yes, believe it or not, 5 retreat costs, and I'll explain why in a second. Weak to grass. So the reason why it's a 5 retreat cost is because basically it gets a free retreat. Okay, so the way it works, it has the Boulder Roll attack, which is for 4 energy, 1 fight, and 3 colorless. So you can play with other things like Irida or water energy for Irida to heal it up if you want. And then it has a base of 130. So 130 for 4 energy is kind of hard to do, but because you can ramp once with your Brock potentially, it's really 134 3, but on a stage 2, so it feels pretty balanced. But the Boulder Roll attack, the effect of it reads, switch both this Pokemon and the opponent's active Pokemon with 1 on your bench. Each player chooses their own Pokemon to switch in. So basically, I attack you for 130, you go to the bench, you bring out a new one, I also go to the bench and I bring out a new Pokemon as well. So this does a couple of things. One, it obviously gets your Golem out of the active, but that also means your Golem most likely can't attack the next turn unless you try to retreat the Pokemon that you have in the active. And then even then, you got to retreat the Pokemon that's there, bring Golem in, and possibly Cyrus something out But you could also pair this with things like Hitmonlee, which would be pretty cool because you hit something to the bench, potentially get it into that 30-point range, bring out your Hitmonlee with its attack, and then attack with Hitmonlee on the following turn to knock out the other Pokemon. So that would be pretty cool. But it also puts their Pokemon onto the bench. And if your Hitmonlee can't do it, then they basically got a free retreat from the Golem, and therefore allowing you to bring it back into the active unless you absolutely have a Cyrus. So this card would be pretty cool to have. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. But anyways, the next ones are the Koga cards, which is Weezing and Muck. So we're going to start with Weezing. Weezing EX 150 HP for the stage 1, a little bit higher than usual, but I think it's necessary for a Weezing as it's kind of a bulky Pokemon. Obviously Dark type, retreat cost is 3. It doesn't really matter what its retreat cost is. It has to be at least 3 in my opinion though, because Koga allows it to bounce for free, right, because of Munchlax, and weak to fight in, and I gave it the attack a Toxic Tackle for 1 dark energy. It does 40 damage, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned, so pretty much 50 damage for 1 energy, whereas the baby version basically does 40 damage for 1 energy by poisoning it as well. But the emissions amplifier, which is the ability, double the amount of damage poison does to your opponent's active Pokemon. So this is pretty cool because right away we're actually doing 60 base because it does 40 and then 20 for poison instead of 10, making it a total of 60, which is pretty strong for 1 energy on a stage 1 that has 150 HP. And so you get to do a ton of chip damage, and then you also get to Kogo it back after receiving a ton of damage yourself because it has 150 HP, and then obviously with the giant cape it'd be 170, so that would actually be pretty strong in my opinion. And then it would also work with other cards that poison as well because it doubles the poison. And specifically, there's a Toxicroc, one of the newer Toxicrocs in the game right now. When it attacks, it has no damage, but it says poison the opponent's Pokemon and do 20 instead of 10. In this case, it says double. So it not only would do 20, but it would actually do 40 with that Toxicroc, which would be really huge over time. And that would be a pretty cool combo as well. But now we're going to get into the Muck, and the Muck EX is 160 HP for the stage 1, dark type, weak to fight in, and also a 3 retreat cost, because again probably has to be a minimum of 3 if you can just bounce it back for free with the Koga. And I gave it the attack Nasty Goo Mix, 2 dark, 1 colorless, so 3 energy requirement total, 40x. So this attack does 40 damage per special condition your opponent's active Pokemon is affected by. So if it's burn, poison, and sleep, all 3 of them, then it actually does 120. With a burn and poison, that does an additional 30, 20 for burn, 10 for poison, that's 150. If you have it on the field, if you have a Weezing on the field with this when it was poisoned, it actually means you would be able to do 160, and then add in reds, it's 180, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger over time. Now, it's not easy to get 3 energy special conditions on your opponent at the same time, but there is Grafefe and Hypno in the game currently right now, which do those special conditions, sleep and poison from the bench, as long as you flip a heads. And then I showcased a Magby baby Pokemon for Magmar in the last video. Go check it out if you haven't checked it out yet. And it basically does the same thing, except for burn, you flip a coin from the bench, and if heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is burned. So if you could poison, burn, and sleep all in the same turn, this would do 120 base damage, and then increased by the burn, poison, and whatever else you may have on the field with it. But then we're going to get into the Blaine Pokemon, Ninetales and Rapidash. We're going to start with Ninetales EX, which is a stage 1, fire type, 140 HP, pretty standard for a stage 1, 1 retreat cost, and a weakness to water. And then it has the move Fire Blast for 3 energy, 2 fire, 1 colorless, does 120 base, and then it says discard an energy from this Pokemon. Now, I was saying that the standard right now for like the breakpoints that you're looking for is something like 130, which is pretty accurate, but in this case it's 120, and it's because it works with Blaine, and Blaine gets you to that 150, and that's what you're really looking for. So you have that 130, and then with a red that gets you to 150. In this case, because it's 120, Blaine gets you to that 150 mark, which is really what you're looking for when I talk about 130 as a base. But then, of course, you have to discard a fire energy from this Pokemon to kind of give it a little bit of a downgrade, because it would be very strong. Also, just a little tidbit, the Ninetales, the baby version, does 90 plus 30 from Blaine, which is 120. And so the base, I gave this one the base of 120 instead of something else. But anyways, let's get into Rapidash. Rapidash is pretty cool. I really like this one. 140 HP as well. Pretty standard for a stage 1 EX Pokemon. 1 retreat, also weak to water, of course, because it's fire. And it's a 2 energy requirement, both fire for the attack fire spin. It does 70 base and says your opponent's active Pokemon is burned. So not only, it's actually a base of 90 when you think of it that way, because if you get the burn, it's 20 plus 70, that's 190. And then with the Blaine, it's actually 120. So basically, without the Blaine, 90 is pretty much the same as Starmie EX, so that's already pretty equal right there. This has a little bit more HP, but it also has a retreat cost, whereas Starmie doesn't. And then, of course, you can increase it with Blaine again by 30. So I think this is actually pretty fair and pretty balanced, and I don't see why we couldn't have a card like this, whether it's Rapidash EX or not. But anyways, that is it. That is all the Pokemon. We had 2 for Blaine, which was the Rapidash Ninetales, 2 for Koga, which was Muck and Weezing. We had 3 for Barry, which were Snorlax, Staraptor, Heracross, and 1 for Cynthia, which was the Togekiss. Let me know which ones were your favorite, and if you think this would be a pretty cool idea with Munchlax to bring into the game, so that we can actually have those cards work with the EX versions in the game. Anyways, with that being said, like, subscribe, and share. Join my Discord and my Twitter, and as always, keep cooking.